everyone, and welcome to CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI. We call it WLDA here. We are partnering here with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers series of interviews. I have a pleasure to talking to Meghan Anzelc. Really excited to have you here.
Thanks so much, Asha. I'm really glad to be here too.
So how is, in your opinion, I mean, of course, as you said, Siri, Alexa, auto generation of words or completion of words in Outlook or on your phone has been around, but it didn't really hit people that hard as ChatGPT did. And the behind ChatGPT is the whole large language model where you're working with a lot more bigger data to be able to process it. And then it what's the feedback loop, right? So you give the feedback and then you improve it. And somebody was saying, I wonder if it was you and me talking or somebody else was talking about how it is important, or maybe on the radio I heard, where they were talking about how people are making fun of how ChatGPT doesn't work when the biases are coming out. And what they said is that if you see a bias, you'll give a job review, and the ChatGPT will give a job review for a female a leader differently than a male leader. And what this recommendation is that provide the feedback that you're wrong, and provide the feedback because that data will help process and bring back. What are your thoughts on that? Have you heard something like that where your feedback loop can improve the algorithm to be able to at least identify the biases? In this use case would be the biases, but other use cases like that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I'd say to begin with. So one is it's really easy to build artificial intelligence models. It's very difficult to build good ones that actually are useful and not harmful. That's very difficult to do. So that's one. Second is, and this is related, ChatGPT made large language models accessible. That doesn't mean that it's easy. So there's still a lot of complexity and thoughtfulness that needs to go into how these are used, right? Exactly for some of the reasons that you're highlighting. So on bias specifically, I want to highlight a couple of studies that Kieran Snyder did, who is the CEO of Textio. And Textio is an augmented writing tool, uses lots of natural language processing and AI behind the scenes, but she was analyzing ChatGPT for some of the applications where Textio operates. So one was she looked at using ChatGPT to create job posts, so job descriptions that are posted on a career site. And what she found is that when you enter fairly generic prompts, you get fairly generic responses in return, so kind of a plain vanilla job posting. However, regarding bias, what she found is that the bias around race and age was stronger. And her theory behind that was that that's in large part because the training data set around race and age is weaker, because the data fed into ChatGPT, right, is some portion of sort of the publicly available internet. And we know that there are a lot of areas of the internet that show racial bias and age bias.
Right.
The second study that she did was around generating performance reviews. And this was featured in a Fast Company article. And again, like you said, right, she prompted ChatGPT to provide starting point paragraphs of performance reviews for different prompts and characteristics. And what she found there, among other things, was that ChatGPT was incorrectly inferring the gender of the individual, even when no gender prompts, no gender information was part of the prompt to ChatGPT. So based on the traits provided in the prompt and the role, ChatGPT was sometimes inferring gender from that. And you could imagine the kinds of roles where this showed up. So presuming all nurses are female, all investment bankers are male, right? So sort of along the lines of the stereotypes that we all hold, right? And ChatGPT doesn't know the difference that those are stereotypes and they're not factually correct. So certainly there's a lot around bias. Another part around bias that I think is important to highlight is that ChatGPT along with many other large tech companies, they need to train their models to try to avoid harmful language. And Time Magazine had a piece on this of ChatGPT's use of offshore resources paid really low wages, something like as low as $1.50 an hour, to label harmful information in order to train the model so that ChatGPT would display less of those harmful issues than its predecessor versions. But that's something that I think we don't talk that much about, of behind the scenes of all of these great innovations and potential use cases. There's low paid labor that's going on behind the scenes because you have to be able to label the data. It's a necessary part. That's not an automated task. Similar to content moderators on the other side, right? Once the content is generated, there are content moderators in all of the large tech companies. And again, those tend to be very low paid labor pools. So that's another area of concern, I think, for these is kind of all of the human components that go into creating these tools.
Very interesting, because when you talk about the cons or the challenges of either the large language model or any kind of an AI model, when you're building the model, you're so right. It's easy to build a model, but how effective that model is and how it's used and how it's
absolutely
what kind of data it's trained on becomes critical, and how you create the feedback loop, it becomes critical. And listen, there are a lot of studies which are showing that there is a concern. People are talking about having regulation around AI. People are talking a lot about responsible AI. So these conversations are in talks right now. People are talking about how to be cautious about technology. But I also feel that anytime there's a new technology, there is a worry. Every time there's technology, period, there is worry. People debate on science, right? You have two sides of the story of science too. Some people believe strongly in science, and some people are worried about science in general. But what I really appreciate when people say that what AI is for humans to interact and control or navigate. So the data is provided to you. I mean, a lot of times I would talk to marketing departments or general office managers who are using ChatGPT. When the ChatGPT provides you feedback, very rarely humans are using that raw. They land up editing the content that they get from the ChatGPT. So it's the human engagement with the technology which becomes critical of how to use the technology for good. So at least we are at that level right now where AI is not strong, that's becoming independent and going out killing human race. Where we are at right now, AI is becoming a tool to help humans do their job better. And so we spoke a little bit about the weaknesses of the AI piece. We spoke about the weaknesses of the algorithm and what it could cause issues. Let's turn the table and maybe talk about, where do you see businesses can use this for good? Where can they use AI and the start of building algorithm, building their practices, where they can actually take advantage of the power of technology?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of places where ChatGPT and other language generation tools can be utilized in ways that are beneficial. I think the critical piece, as you noted, is having a human in the loop. So especially in the early days of when new versions of models are released or new tools become available, it's especially important to be very careful and thoughtful with reviewing that output. And we've seen some pieces in the news, Vanderbilt University comes to mind, of organizations that just use the tool automatically without sort of thinking through some of the implications. So in terms of where it can be used for benefit, I think there's a few areas. So one is ChatGPT has shown to be very useful at producing comprehensive sentences and paragraphs summarizing a topic or piece of information. Now, it doesn't always do that accurately. So that's where that human in the loop piece is really critically important. But being able to generate a first draft of an executive summary for a deck you're doing, or some, initial copy for the boilerplate, say, that you use in your job postings, an initial draft summarizing a topic that you want to share with some other people. Those are all things that ChatGPT shows real strengths in, and I think are certainly places where it could be used. Another example of where language generation models can be used sort of in useful ways. So I spoke earlier about Tableau's acquisition of narrative science in the end of 2021. And today, Tableau shows on their website that there are ways that they've integrated language generation capabilities into their data offerings. So you can actually query the data by writing a sentence of what is the profitability in Arizona. So literally just typing the words, and it comes back with the data, with a chart, with all of that. So that's a super useful way of using language generation. You don't need to know SQL. You don't need to understand the database behind the scenes. You don't even need to be able to, sort of write a Boolean statement. Just writing the language of what is the profitability in Arizona in segment X is sufficient to get results. So that's a super exciting and I think really useful application to help put more data in the hands of end users, right? And really giving them the tools and ability to query the data they have. So that's something that I'm interested in seeing and watching how Tableau works through integrating natural language generation capabilities into their tool set.
I really enjoyed having this conversation. Thank you so much for joining today. Please visit CDO Magazine.tech for any additional interviews. There are tons of great content on CDO Magazine website, so make sure that you can touch upon that. And if you're interested in learning about women leaders in data and AI, just a great organization with a mission. It's a membership organization with senior leaders. We call them WLDA leaders. And we also have WLDA Nation, which I'm super excited about because it's data and AI for all. Anyone who's interested in data and AI can join WLDA Nation. And you can look at upcoming events on CDO Magazine website as well under partner events. Thank you so much. And you can feel free to connect with Meghan and me on LinkedIn. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.